Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Big Home Ed Conversations. My name is Kelly, and as always, you are here with myself and my co-host Ashley, as we are going to delve into another topic that we think that you guys are going to find really useful. Essentially, I am a qualified mindset coach, and I work with families who are kind of transitioning into home education. Ashley is an ex-primary school teacher and a home ed mum of 3, and obviously I myself home educate my 2 kids as well. And we're essentially here sharing our experiences, conversations that we are having behind closed doors that we just think that are going to be really useful for you guys to be mulling over with us. So grab a cup of coffee, come join us at the table, and we're going to be diving into today's conversation, which is essentially this yucky, weird feeling that we can sometimes find ourselves having as we come to the end of a school year. Again, I say with little quotation marks, which, as we know, doesn't really apply to the home ed world, especially in the UK. And that kind of weird vibe that we sometimes get over the summer as we amp our way back up again into another school year, and the planning and the worrying and the feeling like you've got to do something different or change up your schedule or whatever it is that you might be doing right now. And the reason why we kind of found ourselves wanting to talk about it more than anything was the fact that actually this is the first year that I actually don't think it's even dawned on me that we were coming to the end of another year, that we have gotten into such a good flow and we're seeing such constant gentle progression that actually I just don't even really think about it anymore. But I know that a year or two ago, even this time last year, I was definitely feeling a lot more anxious. So we wanted to kind of get into that today and talk about that a little bit, and I guess why it might not be the case right now, but hopefully in time you will start to feel a lot more relaxed about this. But why do we feel this way? What is going on for us here? And what is it that's maybe led to us feeling this anxiety at this time of the year? And we're going to get into that a little bit more depth. So first and foremost, we'll do our gratitude. I'm going to go out there and say that I am grateful that for at the very least 2 solid days, Ashley is back in the UK. I'm not going to physically get to set eyes on her, but I'm very grateful to know that she's in the country, which is always really lovely. She's jetting back off again tomorrow, or rather driving off. Bless you, I can't even begin with 2 solid days in the car with your children. But apart from that, I think it's just nice to have you here. I'm glad to have you back for a moment.
Yeah, it's so good to be home, that feeling of like your own stuff and that calm that settles in on you when you come in the door. So that was lovely. And it is a quick turnaround, so it's jam-packed, mostly with packing and unpacking and all of that fun.
All the washing in between.
Yeah. And we have lovely sunshine both days, yesterday and today. So I think that was kind of going to be my gratitude, is thank you, England, for some lovely weather while I have to run and do errands and stuff, and I'm not also getting soaked while doing it. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And our flight was also blessedly uneventful. So that was also amazing.
So you were really poorly on the way out, weren't you? Bless you. Travel sickness. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I can remember being pregnant, flying to Rome when I was having my son, and my goodness, it was the worst flight of my life. I've never felt so ill. Obviously, I'm not saying that obviously Ashley is pregnant. I'm not going down that line. No, she's not that.
No.
But just travel sickness. So I get it. Like, the being ill on a plane is horrific.
It's the worst.
It just makes you feel so horrible. So I really felt for you. But yeah, so well done.
Thanks.
I'm glad you managed to get back safely.
Yes, we were. Everything arrived. All our bags were there. I mean, it's so funny. I feel like years ago, decades ago, probably, traveling was, air travel was such an experience, and you dressed up for it, and it was this like lovely thing. And now it's just like, I'm just thankful if all our stuff gets there, and we don't lose a kid along the way. So yeah, it's a very low bar these days.
I must admit that proper Home Alone moment, it felt like a constant anxiety running in the back of my head. I remember watching that with the kids at Christmas for the first time in years and being like, how does a family fly to another country and not even realize they don't have one of their children with them? Like, that's such horrendous parenting. But I can kind of I can see how that could happen with a massive family. It's very strange.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's crack on, I suppose. So yeah, so I guess coming into this time of the year, let's just like straight up talk about the actual conditioning that goes into this time of the year, because as individuals who grew up being schooled, this time of year was a time for assessment. It was a time for being very aware that something is coming to an end, that you have worked towards a certain level, you have achieved a certain level, you're ticking boxes, you're finishing stuff off, you're clearing out the classroom, you're doing loads of word searches and chill out days, you're doing your sports day at school, you're sitting the end of an era come to a pass, and you know that you're about to move into a different school maybe, or just a different teacher, and you're going to be in a different room. You're going to have different expectations, things are going to amp up a little bit more. And that whole sensation of something ending and something beginning, and a leveling up happening, and a new expectations, new levels to try and attain, is something which carries with us into our adulthood. And this constant reflection, like we find we do it at New Year's, and we find ourselves doing it in the summer, where we kind of look at the year and go, oh, half a year has gone by, what have I achieved? And like we do it all the time, with this constant measuring ourselves against some random yardstick that nobody even has a clue what the actual kind of attainment levels are supposed to be, where we constantly feel like we're never quite enough. And this really plays into kind of education, and I think that an awful lot of what we feel around that comes from being educated that way, is that constant kind of clawing towards the next level of something. And the way we home educate personally, my children don't have set grade levels. They don't have sort of set, like, for example, my son, as he was learning to read, I considered him reading at the point where he was mostly reasonably fluently reading a sentence without too much intervention from me. Wasn't perfect, wasn't polished, wasn't like he wasn't getting every single word, but for the most part, he was able to decode a passage of text and figure it out mostly by himself. And I would say to him, like, oh, look, you can read stuff now. And like my daughter, for example, the other day has stopped saying that she can't read and has started saying she can barely read. And I pointed out the distinction to her, that she herself has acknowledged that she can now read a bit. So I said, try and look at it from a more positive perspective. At one point you felt like you couldn't read anything, and now you can read a little bit. And she was like, oh yeah, I kind of see what you mean there. So it's like they themselves might make a distinction that they are now capable of a little bit more than they were before, and feel more confident doing it. But we certainly don't sit them and go, right, well, you've achieved level 2 of reading, we're moving on to level 3, or whatever kind of grading and test. We don't test it, we don't put it on some sort of assessment. We just gently observe and monitor and notice, and just gradually increase difficulty, or they kind of do on their own as they feel more confident and capable of doing it. And I think what's really lovely about that is just that sense of self-achievement. I don't feel like they are constantly worrying that they should be at a certain grade level right now and that they're not, or that somebody else is and they're not, or somebody else is older than them and achieving certain things. They don't seem to compare themselves to their friends or to anyone else in their community. Sometimes they compare themselves to me, which I find amusing, but they say, like, well, it's so easy for you. I'm just like, I'm 36. Like, I've been reading for 30 years. Like, of course it's easy for me. Like, and I just sort of like really, I'm really sweeping about that. I'm just like, of course I could do that easier. Like, I've had loads of practice. Like, when you're my age, this will be super easy for you too. And they're like, oh, okay, fair enough. But aside from that, they don't tend to compare themselves or to each other, actually, which I really love as well. I don't see an awful lot of inter-sibling comparison either, which is lovely. But yeah, I don't know how your girls are with stuff like this. Do they tend to worry too much about this?
They don't. I think what's so like glaring when that becomes like a question. We were in the States just recently, obviously, and someone asked them, oh, we were at the library and they do summer reading over there. So obviously it's different in England. Your school is still going on here. In the States, school typically ends end of May, sometime in June, somewhere in that time frame. And where we were, the schools had ended that first week of June. And so we were at the library getting our summer reading packet so the girls could check off the days that they've read. And at the end of the week, you get a book to keep. And the librarian asked them what grade they were going into. And my middle was like, I don't know. And it's one of those things where I just pipe in and say it. And I think the teacher must think, oh, it's because they don't know because they're changing grades. Like that, are they saying they're in third grade or they're going to be in third grade? Like they're not sure. But I just don't even go into it. I'm like, yep, they're in this grade. And they're like, she's like, oh, okay. And checks it off. So she knows which book they get at the end of the week or whatever. But we've never been very concerned with that. Like we've never celebrated the last day of school. We've never, kind of done what is more traditional for kids that go to a traditional school. We've always been all year round and only ever taken off for our holiday breaks, like when we go on vacation or something. Otherwise, even though in the States or in Italy, there's a large summer break, we still are doing school throughout that time, if we're at home, if it works. So there's never been this big, you're now done with this grade and entering this grade kind of
Yeah.
hoopla. Yeah.
And I find it quite funny as well because I mean, my mum being sort of fairly traditionalist around this sort of thing, she's like, "You don't let them have a summer break? Like, that's crazy! Like, they need a break, Kelly." And I'm just like, "No, they don't need a break from their lifestyle.
Yeah.
Their lifestyle
That's,
is a break.
yeah.
It's fine. Like, most of their schooling is done entirely on their own terms when they want to. Like, at the time of day that
Yeah.
makes sense for them, when their energy's in the right place. Like, these kids are not being like, don't sit down at 9 o'clock every day and work through for 5 hours. Like, these kids are not needing a set 6 weeks off to recover from the intensity of school, because school is just life and life is school, and it's just everything just blends together. um
Yeah.
and yeah, absolutely, we as well, when we're on holiday, I don't actively pay attention whilst we're doing it, typically, to school stuff, with the exception of the recent trip we took to Cornwall, actually, where I was curious, and found myself reflecting on it a bit more as we did it, as I know I mentioned in one of our last episodes, because I was noticing just how much we were doing without even meaning to, because it's so naturally ingrained in our days
Right.
now, like bits of colouring, doing a word search, chatting about something, investigating using a wild ID guide. These
Yep.
things are just part of their fun. Like, these are just things they enjoy doing for entertainment. So
Yes.
actually, they are ticking off vocabulary in school and spelling and like all sorts of stuff without even realizing they're doing it. And I think this is where unschooling, obviously for us, that kind of element of unschooling in our life really comes into its own, because it helps you to really show you that with the right kind of encouragement and environments and just keeping things interesting for them, that actually it's happening all the time. And so it's really lovely to kind of reflect on that sometimes, and to recognize that for the most part, you're just chilling. So, like, I know that whilst you guys have been away, with all of the amazing wildlife you've seen, and the hunting for shark teeth on the beach, and like just swimming and playing in a different environment and just witnessing a different culture and going to different places, like all of that amounts to extra information that helps them to process and understand the world around them, that adds to their education. And I think, yeah, it's really fascinating how we sometimes really worry about, like, well, I know, for example, in the schooly world, you hear an awful lot about the summer slide, where kids
Yeah.
end the school year, they take the summer break, and everyone's really panicking because they come back in September and they can't remember half of what they learned beforehand.
Yeah.
And everyone's super worried about it and make sure they have tutoring and all these extra things over the summer to try and stop them from forgetting all of the skills. And I worried about this an awful lot as an early home educator, that you teach them something and then they completely forget about it. And you'd be like, oh no, like, but they need to remember this because it's important for them to learn the next thing.
Yeah.
And one of the real benefits of a life that is spent constantly touching base with these skills and using them is that actually things like addition and subtraction and manipulating numbers or reading or writing, it doesn't slip away because it's just always being used in a really natural way. And I think that's what's really, really quite reassuring for me as a home educator, having now witnessed it for a few years, is that you panic about this a lot at the start, but it actually doesn't work that way when you follow a more kind of like year round approach. And even if you do take a break, they will naturally pull in some of these fun things because they're used to just doing them all the time.
Yeah. It is definitely something that you can get concerned about if you do take a full break where you're not doing anything for, let's say, 2 months. But even then, like you mentioned, you are still weaving it in because it's just your way of life. You're always kind of looking for that next question to answer and finding fun ways to do that. So for us, at least I knew when I was teaching in a school, we typically spent the first like 4 weeks or so rehashing what they would have learned the year before. So just a quick reminder, but that's a month. That's a lot of school to be doing that. And for us, because it's just ongoing, the biggest gap we're ever facing is a couple of weeks. Now, I will say this summer we are taking a larger, I don't want to call it a vacation because it's not, we were visiting my family and then we're going to visit my husband's family. And so because of the timing of the trips being back to back, we are going to be without doing any formal curriculum or where they're like sitting at a desk, filling out and reading along, with a book. That is a solid break for us, which is in my mind, not ideal, but it's just the way that our vacations fell this year and the way it worked with my husband's job. And so we kind of have to roll with that. And that is great that we're able to do that with the homeschooling lifestyle. But I'm just being a little more diligent around making sure the girls are reading and making sure that we're still taking time to go to the library. We were at the library every week when we were in Florida, reading all sorts of different books. My girls love reference books, which is great.
Yes, I
So,
do too.
yeah, like what are the top 10 birds to have as pets? And it talks about each one. I mean, we're reading all of that. And so I love the library in Florida. Is so fantastic. So that was a great experience. And then lots of games to keep the math skills up. Like there are so many ways to keep up with math with games. So I just make sure we keep doing that. I do imagine the biggest pushback that we'll have when we get back in mid-July won't be the actual curriculum or them having forgotten anything. It'll just be getting back into that routine. That will be the challenge. And so I think for so many of us, like you were saying, you don't need a break from your life because it already is so different than school when you're having to, be in your desk at 8 a.m. and all of that. But it is hard to get back into the routine. So I think that will be our challenge. I'm anticipating that. But otherwise, I don't think we'll have any issues in terms of content, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing you said there as well is actually a good point that I often forget about, which is the fact that all of the groups and clubs and things stop over the summer holidays. And that can sometimes be super, like, messes with my head. Like everything just suddenly goes off and stops kind of functioning like it should. And we're bored, we're restless, we're knocking around the house too much. I have to go out of my way to make sure I've made play dates and we've organized fun things to go do, but everywhere's really busy. And honestly, it's an absolute nightmare. And I think it's one of the things I do find a bit frustrating about the summer as a home educator is the fact that most clubs and groups stop during that window because everyone is just so busy. And a lot of providers obviously think that everyone just wants term time as well anyway. So it just gets a bit boring. And I think you have got to kind of work with that a little bit and be a bit kind of, you have to have some forethought. You have to put some stuff in play to know that you've got some plans and you've got some things coming up. Otherwise it can feel really long. And then that kind of slowness sometimes I think can be really hard on everybody, kids and you, which then I think makes you amp up a bit too hard, ready for September. And this is, I guess, the next stage of this conversation is like you come off the end of a school year, we're reflecting, we're kind of thinking about what we've been up to and where we've been. And like I've been kind of collating photos, for example, and putting them all in a photo album on my phone of just really amazing home ed moments, just to help me to actually notice all the amazing stuff we've done. Which has been a really nice thing to do this year, which I'm going to try and obviously scrapbook it a little bit for the kids as well. But the coming out of the summer holidays and kind of getting into September, I find that the boredom that can sometimes be created during those months will lead to me over scheduling for the September, October, November months. And so you've got to also be really mindful of like that actually there's still a balance that you were striking for a reason and to try and be really careful with how much you end up booking in.
Yeah. And so this summer, because we have this long break, I am really taking the time to let the kids kind of have the break again, aside from, some basic math and reading that I'm sneaking in without it being anything formal. But I personally am going to spend a little bit more time. So I am very thankful for the break in the extracurriculars because it'll allow us to get back into our routine in August. We do have a couple little things planned, but for the most part, end of July and August, we will be able to really start to get into the kind of the meat of the academics. So that part hopefully is pretty solid. But in the meantime, what I'm doing is reviewing this past year, taking a minute to just say, okay, what went well and what didn't go well. And an example of this is I tend to do it in the summer and then over Christmas break, like between Christmas and New Year's when I'm kind of thinking, okay, and that's a natural time because you start to do like New Year's resolutions, you start to kind of think about that. So last time I was like, okay, we are overscheduled and this is impacting my ability to feel like calm and to feel like we're not constantly rushing off somewhere. And I also felt that we were doing so much that it was causing a lot of pushback with the academics because we only had a certain amount of time to do it. And then we had to be somewhere. So I ended up peeling back some stuff at the the beginning of last year in January. And so now I'm doing the same thing this summer. What did we do last year? How did it go? Is there anything that we want to peel back from? Are there other things we want to add in now that the kids have expanded their interests or want to try something new? And I'll take the time to organize. So we end up collecting a lot of stuff. I'm trying to be really good about, like you were mentioning, pictures of just moments, but also I'm trying to just take pictures of stuff and then throw them away because I just don't have, I mean, every homeschooler has so much artwork, so many crafts, like it just piles up. So I'm like, let me take a picture of the macaroni necklace, and then nothing is getting thrown away.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that, save for like a few keepsakes. And there was this one woman who I got this idea from, which I thought was brilliant. She does not homeschool, but her kids are doing crafts and art and everything throughout the years. And so every time something would come home in her kid's book bag, she would put it in a folder. And then periodically she would go through the folder. She had a white big piece of poster board that she puts down on her table, and she would take a picture of everything against this white poster board background and put it in a folder on her phone. At the end of the year, she would go to like the photo book making printing places or do it online and print out a book, and it would be that kid's artwork for the school year. And I'm like, that is so brilliant. And one of the questions that she had was, what do you do with the art after you take the picture? And she's like, I throw that stuff away. Nothing gets kept. It's kept in the book. And then that's so cool, right? Because I'm not looking at my old crafts from when I was in kindergarten or first grade, but if there were pictures of them, that could be kind of cute. So I think it's cute.
So, and equally,
Doing
you could
stuff like
scrapbook
that.
a few things, couldn't you?
Yes,
You could
make it
literally
a whole
just set up
thing.
a scrapbook for them each year, and they can just stick in their favorites, and that's your lot. And I think it's so great for noticing progression. So taking photos of them can help you to then flick back through time.
Definitely.
Obviously on your phone, it puts it into like order of timing.
Yeah.
So it means you can flick back to the month and be like, oh, interesting. Like this is what they were doing that year. This is what they've been doing this year.
Yeah.
And it does make for a really great way of kind of reflecting on their progress as well. If you do have to do any reports, or if you do like to sit there and reflect on it properly and really think about it, then I'm sitting here thinking 4 years in, maybe it is about time I sat and did a bit of reflection, to be fair, and like really analysed where my son was at and what he's been doing. But also, as I say, you just see the progress, and I feel happy with where we're at. So I'm not panicking about it, but it certainly is a thought that actually maybe it would be quite nice to sit and actually do that and actually really respect the progress he's made, especially as an autistic ADHD young man who's clearly he's struggling with fine motor skills and all the rest of it, that actually some of his recent work is really coming along, and it's really rewarding to see how they've progressed. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. No, I think that's a huge part of it too, right? Just to see that over the years, it's so nice. And with, like you have been saying, like planning out for the year, like that's kind of the next thing that we do. So I'm looking to review, organize what we have, get rid of stuff we don't need, and then plan for the coming year. So that includes obviously all those extracurriculars and kind of working that calendar out for the week. And then the curriculum that we're doing. So in fact, I just brought back a bunch of stuff with me from the States that we're going to try to do for English and history. And we're, I think, going to kind of have a focus this year on the 50 states and actually try to really tie everything from history and geography into, and even English, some of our like novels that we'll read and stuff. I kind of want it all to tie into that theme. So we'll see how it goes. That's my plan now. There's a lot more planning to come from that, but it really does help me to kind of think that way. And then we were even thinking about next summer what we're doing. And I was like, well, if we go to the States, then maybe we'll loop into these museums because that'll tie into what. So there's a beauty in the chaos, but there is also definitely something to be said for having some plan out there to be able to then pull back and tie everything together. So I think that we're going to do something like that, but more to come on that. But that's my plan. So this summer, I need to really get that a little more nailed down. I'm hoping that the break, when things are hectic because all the kids are out of school here in England for basically the 6 weeks once we come back, that we'll just, stay to ourselves and get the new school year rolling. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of get things up and running. I think that's the thing. This is the first year, like Christmas, I did it, and the February kind of half term, I did it, where I actually took that little pause, kind of just quickly rethought about the topics with the kids. So I sat down and had a chat with them, found out what kind of thing they're interested in learning about, and we put some planning together, because I found that actually week to week, it wasn't that we weren't doing anything, but I found the tiring brainness, that's a terrible sentence, of trying to just keep thinking of something to do. Like, what are you interested in? What should we learn about today? What do you fancy doing today? Like, where should we go? Like, it was just so tiring. So I do a very top level kind of like brain dump kind of planning, literally is one piece of paper that's literally split into like ideas for maths, ideas for English, ideas for art, like entrepreneurship, like all the different sort of sections that they'd maybe typically consider in a school, and anything else that matters to us. And I just put some ideas in, and we'll just try and do as much of it as possible. And actually, I was looking at it the other day and ticking stuff off that we've actually found ourselves doing and enjoying, and being really pleased with it. Actually, we've done an awful lot of it. And instead of me standing there staring at my fridge, which is where my plan thing is, and going, oh, we need to do some English, like what should we do? I don't even know. Actually, I've got a few ideas. Like if I'm feeling stuck and I can't think of anything, then there's some ideas there. And it just gives me that little bit of just like, I don't have to use my brain right now. I can just grab and do. And that's really helping. And I've recently kind of all of the different worksheets and random stuff that I printed off, good old Twinkle fills my house with papers that so often end up just sitting in a massive stack somewhere and nobody ever does anything with them. And I sorted them out into these sort of sleeve folders for them. So they've each got one now that's full of all the stuff that I'd printed off for them in random fits of conversations around something. And they love it, actually, because I'd say you don't have to do anything specific in there. Just flick through it and pick something, whatever you're in the mood for. And I'm happy with anything they choose in it. Any of it's good. And they're happy that they get to have that autonomy. And so whether it's a bit of handwriting practice or a maths worksheet or something, it's just really easy. It makes it really easy to get them to kind of just buy into doing a little bit of sit down work, which is obviously, again, super hard. Poor little ADHD brain just wants to run around. That he doesn't want to do it for long, but it will help him to sit and focus for a little while and do something. So I think that little bit of planning time, that little bit of like, I'm just going to focus for now, just a few hours of sitting and organizing myself, printing some stuff off ready, getting it all organized. It just helps me anyway. I just find that as someone who does like to be a bit more flexible and do things when you want to, that little bit of pre-planning, it doesn't have to be we're doing that then and that's that. It can just be that I've got some ideas and I want to run with those when we feel right to do them. And we won't do them all, but it will give us something to work from, which I just think is really important. But I will definitely be doing a bit of that over the summer as well. Like we'll probably wrap up our ocean topic and we'll start to think about what we want to do for kind of the autumn term and pick something else. And again, we'll just hopefully have some fun doing some random things with that. But I think what's really nice now is that I definitely felt a sense of anxiety coming into a new school year. And we sometimes do a not back to school like day out. So we celebrate the fact that we're not going back to school after the summer holidays. Typically we've done Legoland, because as soon as it's quiet, it's quite nice. We use our Tesco Club card vouchers and we'd go and have a day at Legoland. But some people do like a picnic, or like the local community would do a big kind of home ed, not back to school picnic or something. And that's really nice. It's just a nice opportunity to just kind of reconnect and enjoy the peace and quiet that is left behind when all the chaos crowds go back into the classrooms. Poor things.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we're like left with this lovely kind of big open playground, and we can go and just chill, which is nice. But yeah, I think it's really a lovely time of year to be kind of stopping and reflecting again, and I'm really appreciating what you've done already and what's kind of coming and like how much they've progressed. But I know that back in the early days, the fear was real, like the anxiety around how much you had to achieve, and like, oh, they would be going into year 3, so what would that mean? I'd need to make sure they were doing this and this now. Or like when you print off the tick sheets that teachers are kind of your top level like intentions, I guess, for the kids learning like the levels that they would be expecting in schools, which I sometimes do just to kind of have a once over. I printed off the one for year 3 and it was like 4 pages long compared to like year 2, and I was like, oh my goodness. But then I realized that it was for the whole of like key stage 2, so it was actually 3 to 6, like, so it wasn't just for year 3. It was like, this is what we'd look at after the key stage 2 kind of section is completed, and I was like, oh, okay, that feels a bit better. But actually reading through it, I noticed that so much of it was just automatically being done as part of life anyway. And it's really not a lot of stress. And there's also opportunity there for you to really consider, like, do you actually believe through your own research and your own child and what you can see their skill sets are and where they're kind of headed, how much of what's on that is actually necessary anyway, really? Like, do we actually agree with that sort of target, and is that the age that you think that this child is going to be working on something like that, or actually is it okay if that's a little bit later or whatever? And yeah, it gives you a chance to kind of, I sometimes do it just to kind of see if I've forgotten something which would be important to teach them, because I'm not going to ever say that I'm infallible. Of course I'm going to forget things like anybody would, or not think to touch on something. So I need to make sure that I am looking for other ways to be sure that we have covered a broad range of conversations. But for the most part, I do feel like most things come up quite naturally in life anyway. The stuff that's being covered on a school curriculum is coming up. If you are actively spending time with your children, going out and about and doing things with them, you're going to notice stuff anyway. So I guess my point is not to stress it too much. You don't need to be sitting there planning out how you're going to meet every single one of those targets and intentions. That actually most of it will come on its own at some point. And where you are seeing that maybe a subject isn't, then it gives you an opportunity to think how you can try and integrate that somehow, and how you can bring that into their world. But I guess it's, from the mindset perspective, it's really trying to remember that this time of year, the reason why we're feeling these feelings is because we were conditioned to do so. And that the reality is there is nothing in human nature that actually says that we should be sitting there judging ourselves and seeing what we've done and seeing how productive we are and whether or not we should be doing more and how we should be doing it for the next year. That isn't actually a necessary part of being human. It definitely doesn't have to happen in September. Definitely doesn't have to happen in the new year either. But like, even just to like, the reason why school even started in September, I don't know if many people even know why it falls how it does and why we have the long summer breaks and stuff like that. But actually, it all comes back to rural communities. They couldn't get the buy-in from rural communities to send their kids to school until the harvest was done. So that was September, October time, sometimes even November in some areas. And then they obviously wanted their children home over the summer because they needed them at home to help with the summer harvest. So this was all just because they were trying to please the rural communities. So even just the structure of how a school year falls isn't relevant, like, to actual human nature. This isn't like isn't there for any other reason. That's why it was like that. So you've got to try and remember that as well, that actually there's no set timing in terms of a child's psychology or development. That's not where they suddenly pivot and can do more. Like, that's not the point.
Yeah, in school, I think we know that child development wasn't part of the educational curriculum outline when schools were established. All kids develop at different rates. And actually, what's interesting is, just to kind of pivot here for a second, in Italy, there was a question around when I was teaching in the school there, if the children would be held back if they weren't passing, let's say, a math level or an English level. And the thought at this particular school anyway was that we don't keep children back because by the time they get to fifth grade, which is year 6 in England, they're all sort of back at that same level. So that unless someone is like truly struggling for some very serious reason, they won't hold children back, even if they're not getting top grades. I think there's pluses and minuses to that, but that way of thought is sort of what we were saying around kids come into it at a different pace, and every child's going to be different. And it's something that you just have to be aware of.
Yeah. And not stress too much about, right? Because at the end of the day, like, your kids might be the equivalent. Like, for example, my son is coming to what would be the end of year 3. And if I wanted to, I could then start to have that major anxiety that he would be like, 4, 5, 6 away from going to secondary school. And that in itself feels like really, really stressful. Like, I've only got 3 years to have him mentally prepared to be taking on secondary school level education. But the truth is, he'll be ready when he's ready. That will naturally just happen as he gets to that age. He'll start needing more. He'll start wanting more input. He'll start to be able to go into things in more depth. He'll be able to focus for longer. He will start to show more interest in going deeper on subjects. He'll be able to handle more complex conversations. And ultimately, I'm not worried about these things. And that's actually an interesting question you get asked quite a lot as a home educator, which is the whole, like, do you think he'll carry on doing it through like secondary school and stuff? And it's just like, yeah, well, like the intention is to just carry on all the way through, really. Yeah, like if he wants to carry on home educating even up through college, and even if he wants to do like open university courses from home, etc., like, I couldn't care less. Like, he can carry on getting his education being at home all the way through if he really wants to. But I do actually suspect at some point he's going to want to go and have some fun and like go off to university and go off the rails. At some point he's going to need to go stretch his wings, like we all do. But I know that they'll do that when they're ready and when they want to, and when it feels good for them, and when it's going in a direction that makes sense for their career. And ultimately, I've just got so much faith in this process now. And I think if you don't right now, I guess I want you to listen to me and understand that the reason why I now have faith is because I have stressed about it, and I have overplanned, and I have overscheduled, and I have cut it back, and I've overscheduled again, and I've like put loads of effort into stuff and then have my kids go, don't want to do it, and then made me really miserable. And I've had to reassess how we plan. And over and over and over again, we have reinvented what a school year looks like, or what kinds of things we do, or the kinds of outings we do, or what their kind of zone of tolerance is around their sensory needs and all the things. And you are going to be doing that. You're an incredible parent, whoever you are, because you are going to be observing and noticing and changing and twisting and reconforming your entire home ed model so often. And it's just, if you are being intuitive to that, and you're noticing and you're seeing that things aren't working and you're changing stuff up, then just try to see that as a positive. It's not that you've got it wrong. It's just you're trying stuff and it's not always going to work. And the real conditioning that's coming at you this time of year, I just want to really stress that please take a big, deep breath. There is no big brother watching you. Nobody cares. You and your children are allowed to live the life you're living. You are not breaking the law by deciding to do this differently. You do not have to attain any certain grades or meet any certain expectations or levels that anybody outside of your home is putting in place for anybody else. Like, you are allowed to choose to allow your children to gradually meet certain levels if it helps you to have some sort of marker, reflection process, scrapbooking, report writing, whatever it is that you like to do at the end of a school year, just to reflect and to think as a process, then great. But do it because it makes you feel better, or you feel more relaxed, or helps you to get a better grasp and understanding of what your children are doing and how you can better help them. Don't do it because you're worried that you're not doing enough, or that you need to prove to anybody else that you are. Do it for a reason that's actually a positive one for you, and trust yourself and trust your kids that actually this time of year is the summer. It is designed for frolicking and for water parks and for like chilling out in the sunshine and going to the beach and eating too much ice cream and doing some fun exploring and learning along the way. It is not all about stressing about school and what you've done and what you're doing next. So just try and strike a balance. Do what makes sense for you, your family, and make sure that you're not stressing your way through the summer months, I guess, is all I have to say on the subject.
Yeah. And if you are in an area where you are required to have some formal testing or portfolio reviews, I've been there, and I can understand how much effort you put into preparing for that and how important it can really feel to do that. I think that it's just always good to remember that there are other people that can share their experiences with you on that. I know for Italy, I reached out to a lot of people to get their perspective. And then once I went through the first iteration of it, that first year, I had a much better feeling for how my district dealt with it, how my area was. And I was able to really have a much calmer experience the next time around. So you will get to that point where you have a good feel for how to do it. And the same thing for friends of mine that do it in the States. I have one friend who went into her portfolio review and had just put so much stuff together for it. And then she was just, first time concerned. And I think the feedback was just really lovely and saying like, all this is so great. Love it. Let me help you with the recommendation. Next year, focus a little more on this. So it wasn't even this, like, you're doing it wrong. Don't do that. It was absolutely just all of this is so great. I'm seeing that maybe your child could need a little bit more writing, for example, or something. So maybe do this, a little bit more of this when you're, going through your next school year. And she actually at the end was like, that was really helpful because I wouldn't have thought that. But now that she pointed out to me, I see like, yeah, maybe we were lacking in that. And so I know it can be so overwhelming. It certainly was for me the first time, but I think once you get a feel for it, just know that it will settle down. It will get easier. You'll get a feel for it. And hopefully that end of year vibe will be calmer, and then you can just carry on after it's done.
Yeah, I think that real kind of fear of being judged or having to prove yourself to anyone is just so real. and it's okay to have some compassion with yourself. You're definitely going to be feeling a bit anxious around that, but like anything that's new, it's always going to feel way more daunting the first couple of times you have to do it, like whether it's submitting a report to the local authority or having to get your kids to do some end of year assessments or whatever. Let's say depending on the country you're in, you'll have different rules. But yeah, it's not fun, but I think we have to have faith that we can do hard things, that we can get through tricky moments, and that you'll be surprised. Quite often, I think we're quite hard on ourselves. And as home ed parents, 9 times out of 10, we are absolutely amazing people, and care a lot about our kids and are doing an awful lot for them. And sometimes I think we're really, really hard on ourselves and think that we're not doing anywhere near enough. I mean, I had the play therapist that works with my youngest today saying, like, you guys are amazing. You're so self-aware. Like, you're doing so many of the right things. Like, she gave us some really great suggestions, stuff that we hadn't thought of yet, sort of improving on things that we're already doing. But it really made me, every now and then you get these moments when someone praises you and reminds you that actually you are doing a lot of good already. Like, you are doing the right things. You are making good progress. And it's okay if you haven't figured some of these stuff out yet. You don't know everything. And we're going to keep learning every single year. So it's all good. Just keep rolling forwards and supporting yourself along the way. But yeah, so hopefully that's been reassuring for you all. And I think we're only a couple of episodes away from the end of this season, officially anyway, but we are going to do some little mini teaser episodes over the summer. Myself and Ashley have got some fun little plans of things we're going to do some episodes on individually, just to ease things a bit, because obviously we've got various travel bits going on, and we also do try to take a bit of a break with our kids a bit over the summer at least. Full next season will obviously start again sort of September time, and we have some brilliant interviews lining up already. I've been reaching out to some people this week and got some stuff in the diary, and I'm very excited. So yeah, keep tuning in and keep rating and all the rest of it, please, because we are getting huge growth at the minute, month on month, in terms of listenership. We peaked a new kind of milestone this week as well, which is really exciting. So just keep listening, keep sharing, keep getting involved, and we'll see you again soon. All right, guys, take care. Bye.
You've been listening to the Big Home Ed Conversations podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Big Home Ed Podcast for updates. And we can't wait to see you next week, where we talk with Luna, who is currently world schooling. You can follow her to learn more about her experience on Instagram. She's at Luna Flower Day, LunaFlowerday. And remember, if you want to talk about a topic, do let us know. We love hearing from you. Until next time, take care. Did I stumble over a word?